Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yep. So Rush, Signals. There's the cover. Which is about nothing. It's a dog about to do a piss. I think that's what the cover is. It's a signal. It is a lightly lyrical concept album, actually. Not as good as the last one. Very much 80s and not 70s, with modern recording technology, etc. There's going to be a lot of moaning, I think, so we should applaud Rush for so successfully moving into the 80s to sound like 80s and actually completely retaining their thing. It's just as muso. It's all that is all there in the 80s. So they deserve some kudos for that, because that's amazing. It was written on tour. It's their last album with a long-term producer. It is definitely a change, changing the guitar, I suppose, and the production. It was written on tour, and I think there's a lot of filler. You've got Digital Man and New World Man. They successfully do the Police sounding Rush thing, which I don't think is as big a deal as all that, because I mean, you listen to the Police, it's not that different to Rush. I mean, it sounds a bit like Rush. They're quite similar. So but it's that you can really, even the good bits of the album, you can lose them in the. It is like a fatal mix of the 80s-ness production and a lot of filler. There's a lot of filler on this album, and apparently they did struggle to finish it. You've got Losing It. It's so 80s. You think, wow, that's, they've done 80s and it's Rush. But about a minute in, don't care anymore, I'm bored. I put on Countdown, the last song. 5 minutes later, I can't remember it. Subdivisions is really boring. The main chord progression, it's like an ending. It's dun 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 dun, and that's it. And that's like the opening. I think maybe it was the single, but it's the opening thing. And I say it's really 80s. It's not actually. You can hear the bass really clearly. It's got a crystal clear sound. It's not like Hold Your Fire, which is the other one we did from like 87. Is it? The production completely stifles some really good music. I think Hold Your Fire they're probably in a better creative position on that one. But I'd rather listen to this because I can hear it. And easily anything before this over this stuff. Anything, because of the production. I don't think the songwriting is as good. I think this was rushed, pardon the pun, although I think in the end they had to take some of their holiday away to finish it. I think to review this album, you don't really talk about the music, you talk about the environment it was created in. What is wrong with the 80s? We went not that long between stadium shows by ELP, massive hockey stadiums, to Madonna. That's a thing, it's not very long. It's like, I think it's 2021 now, imagine 2011. That's the amount of time that we went from that to that. So something horrible happened. That's my review, is that something horrible happened.
So this is it. Okay. I think that's a bit of a relief actually, Kev, because I feel exactly the same way as you do. And sometimes I feel like so sure that we're going to see eye to eye on an album, and you start saying things, I'm like, can I say what I'm about to say? Because I know I'll start saying it and Kev will go really quiet. And
what are you talking about? What does this mean?
So it's weird because Signals seems to be one of those albums that people really like. And I get the sense that there's a lot of people, this was their entry into Rush. These, people who are quite young in the 80s probably wouldn't listen to 2112, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
This came out, and it's like, wow, this is amazing, and it brought a new generation of fans.
Mm.
The old fans, I'm assuming, would be quite indifferent to this. Would be like, wow, this isn't moving pictures or whatever, Maybe moving pictures was as far as they could go into 80s for those.
Yeah.
But because it's a Rush, I get the sense people persisted with it and actually learned to like it. And then you get these people who completely said, no, this isn't for me, and then ran out of albums to listen to.
Yeah.
And then went back to this one.
Yes.
And subsequently found that they actually really, really liked it. I think maybe I would be in that category that, give me 20 odd years and
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely nothing left to listen to. Maybe I'd give this a go and suddenly find it. But I mean, it was similar to the Genesis thing.
This is their Abacab.
Well, I think it's a trick of a tale where I just sort of like I was like, they've completely lost this, and you're like, what are you on about? It's the same.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm like,
oh yeah. 'Cause it is the same.
And I was like, no, is that the one with the dancing on the volcano, whatever it is? It just felt like this to me. It felt really, really sort of plain
and
boring,
washy
and instantly forgettable. And I did wonder we were going to have a similar scenario on this review. But no, I agree with you. I mean, people wax on about Subdivisions being their favourite Rush track, and I'm like,
it's so boring.
It's so ploddy. The whole album plods.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, people say they haven't lost their heaviness, and you're like, yes, they have. And the tracks you highlighted there, like Digital Man and New World Man, they say these are some of the most interesting tracks on the album. No, they're not. They're just. What are you talking about? So yeah, I don't hate it. I'm indifferent to it, and I feel back in my Rush groove, the sort of where I found myself after our first run of Rush albums. Sort of like not really particularly enamoured by it. It was actually, I'm sure it was Moving Picture. I don't know how I picked up Moving Picture, but I started listening to Moving Picture. I was like, actually, this is really, really good line. So I think I'm probably a Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures kind of guy. Those are my albums, which are quite commercial for Rush.
Kinda. Yeah.
Moving Pictures.
Moving Pictures is supposed to be the access point, isn't it? It's supposed to be the one.
Yeah, but I mean, there's enough interesting going on there for it to work. I understand there is some kind of concept in here which they tried to hide.
It's so unfashionable. It's like a trick.
I mean,
it sounds like the 80s, but underneath, it's in 13/8.
I'm sure there's some cool stuff going on there with the drumming and everything.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah.
And the keyboards aren't actually too offensive. They're just boring.
They're so recognisable as 1982. Yeah, 1982. That to me, but it's losing. The start of losing it, you think, oh yeah, it's Spandau Ballet. It's probably, if you put Spandau Ballet on, it sounds much worse.
Yeah.
But that you can tell they very, very cleverly picked up a zeitgeist, the sound is the current sound, but just attached it to what is still just rushing. They are rushing, underneath it just sounds like Rush, but with and it's an album of filler, which means it's not worth digging much further. You need one song. It's one of those. Put on one song, not the whole bloody album.
I'll be honest, Kev. Which song are you talking about?
Well, either Digital Man or New World Man, because they sound like the Police, and the Police are good.
Apparently.
Yeah, Police are good.
I don't know. I've never really listened to anything beyond their Roxanne, that one, and
Message in a Ball.
Yeah, and Every Breath You Take.
Yeah. Well, the other Interesting, yeah. The other problem with the police, why you wouldn't listen to the police, is of course his voice. They're just like Rush. There's not. Wow, they sound like the police now. That's so different.
I'm sure, didn't they use a drum machine at one point? The police. They're sort of like, he said, "Well, I can program this all in a drum machine, so I may as well just do the drum machine."
I don't know.
So for live performances.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Stuart Copeland.
Someone's told me that. Maybe he's programmed some of it in drum machine, which allows him to do other stuff. I don't know, but he told me.
I mean, Stuart Copeland, I think he's controversial. I probably think he's a better drummer than Neil Peart. For me personally, in my humble opinion.
I have no opinion on it. I'm just regurgitating something someone's told me.
He's just more jazzy. He's very jazzy. He's kind of like Vinnie Colaiuta or someone like that. He's that kind of thing. He could have been in Zappa's band.
Oh, right,
it's that kind of drummer, But then obviously nobody even hears that because they're all hearing Sting and his stingingness.
Yeah.
His voice, though, this is the thing. I'm talking about Geddy Lee, obviously, has changed already. I hear just like he sounded in the 90s when he's not singing the very high. He's going.
It's a bit softer, isn't it? It's not like the rock thing.
Sort of nasal thing. I assume that's a touring technique because the touring got heavier. Not just.
He's just bored now. Maybe he's we've sold God knows how many million albums. Why do I have to push? Not like Neil Peart. Neil Peart will he will always make it
as difficult as possible. Yeah.
As difficult as possible. Well, maybe Geddy Lee's not like that. Don't know.
So yeah, I mean to review this album, you have to talk about the 80s. That's what we should talk about. What is the 80s? What the hell happened there?
Good films, bad music.
Yeah,
that's what the 80s is.
Yeah, I mean, the films were so great. I mean, there was a pushback from the good films at the time as being just dumbed down rubbish, like Transformers was. They're really good films, and the Transformers films are not really good films.
Yeah.
or Star Wars Episode 1. I mean, Ghostbusters and all that stuff. It's yes, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future.
I mean, these are popular trashy films, but they're so good.
Yeah, they're so good. Yeah. It's just goodness, pure goodness. It's not like an album.
No.
But everyone was listening to Thriller. Everyone was listening to Thriller.
Well, I haven't got a problem with Thriller, because it was good. But I mean,
the singles were good. That's what struck me really alarmingly.
Oh, when we listened
the singles
to the full
are
album,
awesome.
Yeah.
The rest of the songs are just nothing, and it's because it's the 80s. It doesn't matter.
I actually think he got better at that. I think the as he went on, the actual albums had less filler on.
I didn't like Dangerous. But the whole other reason for not liking
Dangerous was a double album, wasn't it?
I don't know, can't remember. It's got a weird.
I didn't mind Dangerous. I didn't mind bad. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he was the perfect 80s thing, perfect thing to be exploited because he's already famous. He's really talented, and he's willing to do what they need him to do. Make music videos, concentrate on the singles, spend a fortune on just the singles and just make the album. So he's like the in some ways like that. He was perfect for that time, And yeah, I mean, obviously he had the biggest selling album of all time. The fact that overall he didn't sell as much as the comparative big acts from previous didn't matter because all the execs made lots of money out of it. More people will buy Madonna than buy Rush, so surely it makes sense to push Madonna rather than Rush.
Yeah.
So it is just the 80s it is just business sense, isn't it? It's like they weren't doing that before. They didn't think of that. They just let bands make the music.
Oh, I heard the other day Radiohead. It made me think about the the music industry is finished.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell. Basically, Radiohead was suing, I think it was Lana Del Rey, for copying Creep.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure what the song is. But Radiohead was sued by the Hollies for copying The Air That I Breathe for Creep.
Oh, right.
So how does that work?
It's probably just the same progression or something. It's probably something really...
Well, I understand that, but how can a Radiohead possibly sue someone for copying Creep when they've already been sued for copying someone else?
True.
That song.
Yeah, well, surely, yeah. So surely when it would go to court...
It should be the Hollies.
Yeah.
It should be the Hollies suing her. And I went back and listened to Creep and The Air That I Breathe, and you can hear definitely similarities in the chord progression, but they're completely different songs. They're sort of...
Yeah.
One is essentially a ballad. All I need is the... I mean, yeah, okay, lovely, a Disney version of Love. And one is sort of like an emo sort of...
Yeah.
I'm such a waste of time and no one will ever love me sort of thing.
Yeah.
They're not the same song. I don't care what you're saying. There's
different.
no... And if in that case, why doesn't Disney sue everyone that, whose basic narrative outline is the hero's journey? It became the standard narrative for over a decade sort of thing. So surely Disney can sue anyone they want.
Well, they can. It's who's got the money, isn't it? If you've got the money to sue someone, you can do it and win. If someone's not got the money to defend themselves, then they can. But whether that person then would have any money to give them, in which case it would be worth doing.
John Candy's estate sues Vince Vaughn's estate over Dodgeball because it's like Cool Runnings. It's a comedy film about some underdogs that win.
Is that true?
No.
Oh, that's okay.
But I mean, that's what the music industry would do.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's that feels like the same sort of the same sort of attitude. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the Stairway thing. They didn't write Stairway to Heaven, but what they were counting on was that in layman's terms, that intro sounds the same. It just sounds exactly the same. Doesn't mean it is. It doesn't mean it's not just a descending progression. So it's nothing, but it's because people only listen to the first bit and think, oh, it is the same. It doesn't mean they wrote Stairway to Heaven. It doesn't mean they contributed to it either. It's just,
Yeah.
And obviously because Led Zeppelin have got lots of money, it wasn't possible to do it.
Well, here's the issue: is that the people who hold the rights to these songs quite often aren't the people who wrote the songs.
Yeah.
They've just they see it as an investment, and they're rinsing every penny they can out of the song, and it's the death. It will only lead to the death of the music industry because you will not be able to get. You can't tell me that you can sort of own a chord progression.
Exactly. If Disney decided they own a chord progression, and it was it was in their interest to do so, they could do it.
You're just going to stifle all talent. No one's going to be able to write songs.
Yeah, it's not worth writing songs. It's not worth making money out of writing songs.
Yeah.
The money's made out of existing music.
Yeah. Sad, really, isn't it?
And that started in the 80s. That's really it's the late 70s, isn't it? It's mid to late 70s. It's part of that was the punk thing, and very much the Foreigner, the big bands in the US thing. But obviously by the 80s, and then MTV accelerated it, obviously, because it meant it was very easy to target and to decide this is what's going to sell, and keep control of it. It's not really that different from, we were talking about TV, and it is better now than it was. When we had 4 or 5 channels. I mean, Americans will be baffled by this, that we're only this young and we remember 4 or 5 channels, because that's the 90s.
Well, I remember 4.
Yeah, I remember 4. Yeah, I remember Channel 5 starting.
Channel 5 starting.
Yeah.
I mean, we were alive when Channel 4 started, I think.
I remember it. Yeah, I do remember it.
You remember it? I don't remember Channel 4 starting, but yeah, we were quite young. So we only had 3 channels when we were in first school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, but You think about and when there's no channels, you know, the TV execs push for the lowest common denominator, don't they? They push for crap. You know, more people will watch Big Break than Doctor Who. That would have been the line of thinking in the 90s. If you actually look now at the numbers, that's not actually true. If Big Break was getting 15 million views, Doctor Who was getting 10 million in the internet age. The answer is that isn't actually true.
Well, here's the thing. So I think it was Tony Blair's government actually that passed legislation that meant the BBC could not produce the majority of its content.
Yeah.
So the BBC had to go and buy content.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a production company, are you going to want to produce Doctor Who or are you going to want to produce Big Break?
Exactly.
Doctor Who, you got to go out on location.
Yeah.
You got to have different actors in every week. You know, you got some kind of special effects budget sort of thing. You got to have good writers to write a decent plot. Yeah. Or
a snooker table.
You get a snooker table, John Virgo, Jim Davidson, and 3 randoms off the street, and
to play snooker. Well, that's why reality TV is popular. It's not reality TV isn't popular because people like it. It's because they make it because it's free. It's almost free to make.
Yeah.
And as soon as they realise that, spam all the channels with it. That's all that's on. Well, you have to watch it then if you're going to watch anything. And music is exactly like that. What happened in the 80s? It's the same thing, isn't it? That's the mentality. And it seems bizarre now. But MTV played such a narrow band of music. They wouldn't play Michael Jackson until he was white. Then they did. Actually, as it turns out. Because it was so narrow what they were, you know, what they thought they should be doing.
I've got to admit, I only ever watched the Osbournes on MTV.
I bought the DVD.
Did you?
I didn't watch it. I didn't have MTV, so I couldn't watch it. So I did actually buy. Well, I mean, I was enough of an Aussie fan, and that thing there that is there now wasn't there. So it's some funny Aussie stuff, and it was very, very quickly. Oh no, this isn't quite. This isn't the funny Aussie stuff. This is something else. This is something horrible that's been, you know, made up. Okay, Aussie, what you want you to do now? I want you to fall over. You know.
I want you to get bits.
Yeah.
And walk up the road, screaming inane things at passers-by.
And throw this ham into your neighbour's garage or whatever it was. And as soon as you realise it's contrived, it was just you know, and obviously the Aussie thing, it's because he's really like that. That's why it's funny. As soon as Sharon's telling him what to say, do this now, go stand there. It's boring.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So as you said, you know, there's a lot of Schadenfreude to be had that both of those things have died. As much as we moan about Netflix, the alternative is far worse, including the Beeb, even the Beeb.
Yeah,
Big Break was on really the Beeb.
Yeah.
You know, we remember the good stuff, don't we? There's a lot of shit.
Well, on Netflix you've had how many series of Dirt Gentlies?
That's true. I didn't like it,
3?
but hey, I don't have to like it.
They've made it, you know.
They've made series of Dirt Gently, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When people like it and they're making Dirt Gently. I've much preferred the BBC one, actually, the one with...
yeah, I mean, there you go. I thought they had a winning formula there.
Yeah.
Stephen Mangan was very good.
He's perfect for the role. Yeah.
Perfect for it, and they made a decent stab at it. They did some good stories. They could have really followed through, and they didn't.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's part of the problem. And the BBC has changed, and it's run by... There's the sort of individuals who make final decisions. Was before it was very much go and make something, and they just go away and do it. What are you doing this week? Are you doing that? Are you? And that they wouldn't push so hard. Now it's like, oh no, you're not making anymore.
Yeah, there's that famous story of Python when they went up in the saw.
What are you making?
We'll give you 13. We'll give you 13 episodes, and that's your lot.
What do you want to do tonight? Frank Zappa said, only the bland and boring will survive." That's the 80s. And that's what Rush had to do to really interesting, innovative music. The sheen on top makes it bland and boring. The music's there underneath. It's brilliant. Even though it's not the best
enjoy
album.
it so much so, Kev. I don't get it. I couldn't believe I was reading all these real people reviews and they're all saying how fantastic it was, and I'm like, what are you listening to? I don't.
Some of those people will be musos who are tuned into what the instrument is doing, because you can hear on this. It's not like Hold Your Fire where you can't hear the bass. It's not that bad, but if you listen to them as songs, it's an air of, it's a mist of nothingness. That's the problem. But underneath, you listen to the drumming. Wow, and it's not. I don't think creatively they were making good songs. I think they struggled, and this was always going to be a massive album because of it came after the big push.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what they did next; it was going to be huge. And I've said it before. It was worse in the 90s. It's not people call it an 80s thing. It's not an 80s thing. It was started. It became obvious then. It's worse in the 90s. There was more homogenisation. It was just all they did was get rid of the one thing and bring in the next kids to exploit. And that's why Led Zeppelin have sold a lot more records than Nirvana. But I guarantee there's ponytailed executives who've never made any music made a lot of money out of Nirvana, and not much out of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic muso rock, perfectly composed and performed. It's original music, and the Police as well. They're original sounding band. But it is produced to hide it, to make it sound homogenised, so that it's disposable and gets under the door. And it depends how you approach music, whether you can avoid that or not. And that's why it's really hard to egg. Because how do you egg the notes and the playing, or do you egg the songs and the way it sounds? Because that's two different eggs.
The way I look at it is sort of like, am I going to listen to it again?
Well, I'm not.
Have I got any desire
to ever put it on? Yeah. But it goes on my shelf, and then I've got all the albums in a row. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
Satisfaction. So I'm going to give it 3 eggs. I think that's quite generous. 3 eggs.
It is.
I know
really.
Some people would be really upset about that because they absolutely think this is the best thing ever.
A lot of those people would have got into Rush with this album, and it was when this album was being marketed. That's the thing. That's not necessarily. Obviously, everyone's different, and in my humble opinion, and if you've got a different opinion at home, that's fine. And disclaimer. So yeah, I can't egg it. It's either 2 eggs or 4 eggs. It is both 2 eggs and 4 eggs. So that means it's 3 eggs, doesn't it?
It's like a quantum album. It's both things at the same time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Until you look at it.
If you went back, got a time machine and went back into the studio and just took some modern equipment and recorded them secretly, and then came back and mastered it into a new recording of that performance, it would be a much better album.
Yeah.
So there you go. It would need to be better songs.
It needs something on there that's a bit memorable.
Yeah, it's totally. That's the thing. And what is on there is quite boring. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun.
Awesome.
Dun 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 dun. How is that like the coolest Rush riffs and? Bloody hell! It's like going from Black Album to bloody Load.
Yeah.
Where's the riff? Where's it gone? Where's the cool tune? So yeah, that's it. What are we doing? The Who next? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah.